Armored Core is incredible as a series because of the fact that you can pretty much play however you want, whenever you want. Us Ravens are drawn to the fact that if we want to do something different, we can. And it's totally within the confines of the game to do so. There are also players who just love to do the same thing over and over again, seeing if they can hone their skills rocking a specific weapon, or maybe using a specific leg type. Personally, I fall into the latter group. I love to take out my AC and just use the weapons I'm comfortable with. Don't get me wrong, I'll totally break out of my comfort zone and swap a weapon here or there, but for me, playing an Armored Core game is usually about using my favorite parts and just zoning out as I waltz through the missions. Of course, this does make it so that sometimes my skills in specific categories of weapons suffer, and I'll be the first to admit, melee for me in Armored Core is not my strongest. And according to a lot of you guys in my community posts, you also feel the same way. This made me want to try and break out of my shell a little bit, and grow a bit as a Raven. I've seen lots of people post their challenges from Last Raven to Armored Core 1 on YouTube, and I thought I might want to throw my hat into the ring. So I hopped back into my AC, Orem Wing, to see if I could beat one of my all-time favorite Armored Core games, and once again descended into the depths of Layered to see if I could beat the story and arena of Armored Core 3 using only melee. So, for the challenge, we don't need a big thing of ground rules like I normally do. I need to only use parry blades or laser blades as weapons, and all that entails. Pretty simple. I'm simply trying to beat up to rank A1, or Ace, of the arena and clear the Infiltrate Layered Hub mission using only blades. I originally wanted to only use laser blades, but was like, nah, you'll never get an opportunity to use parry blades like this again, so just throw them in, RC. So if you have a problem with me using parry blades, well, that's not my fault. Don't you want to see me flail around and suck with them? I know I would. I'm also not going to let myself skip any missions by quitting them out like we normally can. If something comes up where I need a ranged weapon, and I emphasize need, as in I cannot continue unless I have to shoot this thing, I'll mention it. But I don't foresee any difficulty in any of the missions. I did think, though, that for all my fellow Ravens, before we start the run, maybe a small lesson in blading is in order. If you aren't interested in learning about the details of blades or melee, you can skip to this timestamp and start seeing the run. A lot of people don't fully understand the mechanics of some of these weapons, like how normal weapons function. It actually has a lot of little intricacies that are neither explained or even readily apparent for players. Special thanks to the LCC for helping me with the ins and outs of blading for Generation 3. Check out his Twitch. Man is doing a lot of work in Armored Core 2 PvP as of late. The first thing about Armored Core blading is that there are actually two different types of blading attack in Generation 3. We have the standard slice blade that bipeds, reverse joints, and hovers use. This includes a wide sweep and 2 points of contact on the weapon. One, I believe, at the base of the swing, and one at the tip of the laser. This can result in getting a glancing blow, and why hitting a blade at point blank feels so much better and does way more damage than just hitting with the tip. Conversely, tanks and quads get a poke or stab laser blade swing. This stab can result in much higher damage for the trade-off of being more difficult to hit. Unlike the sweep, however, the stab has 3 points focused into the blade animation, making it easier to get the higher damage if you hit with a part of the blade rather than just the tip or point blank. The damage between these two blade types isn't enormous, but it isn't insignificant either, resulting in about 500 AP of damage depending on the blade that you use. There is also the mechanic of air blading, where if you connect with an opponent while in midair, your AC will snap to the target, enhancing your tracking sometimes, and increasing damage by a factor of 1.5 times. But the tracking can be janky, and especially unreliable if the other target is also airborne. Next is the blade damage itself, which can be modified in a few ways. First and most importantly is the energy supply stat that is available on the arms of your AC. This number is actually a percentage-based multiplier to the blade swing itself. For example, the starter arms has an energy supply stat of 85, which means that you have a 15% penalty to your blade damage. If you were to use the Mirage REE arms, you actually get a 30% bonus, since the energy supply is 130. This energy supply stat is very important, and most people probably weren't even aware of how it works, since it's not too clear unless you go into the context help itself. Finally, there is the optional part, the Op-E Lap, which increases laser blade damage by a set percentage. All of this, of course, modified by your opponent's energy resistance stat. And while we're here, we'll throw in a few quick notes about parrying blades as well, since they may be one of the least used weapons in the entire series. Energy supply does not affect these things, since that is exclusive to the left arm. On top of this, I believe from my testing, parry blades also have 2 trigger points like normal sweep laser blades, resulting in you being able to get glancing blows on a target if you catch them with the tip as opposed to hitting them at the base. You'll see me hit some parry blades in the playthrough that don't kill targets if I don't hit center mass. And yes, guys, I know about the energy shield stagger mechanic on how to use a parry blade properly. Striking an energy shield will stagger the laser blader, letting the parry blade user counter with their parry blade. But since I need a laser blade for this playthrough, I won't be able to use that mechanic. Sorry, guys. Remember too that parry blades have no lock-on capability, so hitting a target is all about timing. And since glancing blows are a thing, hitting center mass is exceptionally important. Now that you're sufficiently educated, let's get into our Armored Core 3 playthrough and see if I actually have the ability to do this. Before I even started my run, there were fights in the game that were coming up that I knew for a fact I wasn't going to be favored in. I've played Armored Core 3 enough to know what was coming up and to prep. So this is how I knew the game was beatable with melee, but still quite difficult. There were 3 fights, in fact, that I was very worried about. All of them built to absolutely slaughter a melee-built AC, and I affectionately dubbed them the trifecta of pain. Because man, I can tell you, the hardest part of this challenge was certainly not the final mission. I'll tell you that much. Each of these ACs were amazing at energy management, were Op Intensify enhanced, and had absolutely crushingly hard-hitting weapons at close range. They were going to be a problem, and I was not looking forward to fighting them. Who's in the trifecta of pain? Well, you're just gonna have to wait to find that one out. Starting off with our Raven test, we had to immediately purge everything we had short of the laser blade. The mission isn't difficult, and taking out my opponents went without any sort of hitch. I was happy as always to be along a Raven's best bro, Apple Boy, as we start our quest together. Small things like getting staggered point blank was something I would have to get used to, because, believe me, it's gonna get a lot worse. When designing my AC, I decided I wanted to stick with midweight biped for majority of the missions. You would think as someone doing a blades only challenge, I would want something nice and fast to close in on targets. While that is half true, I figured that I would also most likely want some sort of defensive buff as well, since I would be getting smoked trying to close in on some targets. An extra 1,000 or 1,500 AP will really save your ass. On top of that, I also was very used to dodging missiles as a midweight, and got most comfortable with it. Many of the fights would have waves of missiles, both in missions or in arena battles coming at me, and if I wanted to keep my AP in order, dodging was a must. Since my goal for the game was to just clear it and not do it as fast as humanly possible, I was fine with being a bit slower and having the concessions of playing a midweight biped. Fitting out our AC, I pick up a parry blade, the SB Rocks. The 30-shot parry blade that actually has quite a quick reload time. I figured this thing would be good for killing MTs. The Mirage REE arms for that sweet 130% laser blade damage, the SNSK legs for some increased mobility, and of course our heavy lifting item, the Crest CLB LS2551 laser blade. I chose this one for the higher power, and for a lot of battles we were going to need to be able to blitz targets, so this was my laser blade of choice for the playthrough. I wasn't that worried that I would need range, but there were a couple fights I was worried about where I might not just be able to make contact with the target. We still lack some important parts at the start of the game though, like better boosters, a generator, a radiator, things like that. But not having to get any new weapons or inside parts was very kind to our comb reserves. we started to plod through some of the lower level missions and lower level arenas. Things like End Employee Standoff in the Zidane Weapons Factory were simple, since all the targets were so large. They just ate things like Parry blade strikes for breakfast. Secure the Mine had an abundance of small enemies that were also one-shot by both the laser blade or parry blade. In fact, the laser blade was doing so much damage, the larger Walker MTs weren't even playing their explosion animation. They just evaporated, Armored Core 1 style. We of course also went in and said hi to Guidos in the arena, getting to practice our gap closing with missiles coming at us. I was also beginning already to get a better feel for the timing of the parry blade, being able to jump in and hit targets rather than running into them, prepping it, and then hitting them. I knew at some point I was probably going to have to rely on this thing. After clearing a few missions and upgrading my generator to the RAWs, I decided to pop back into the arena and get the rest of our E-ranked ACs cleared out. Having got the missile launchers before we did our missions to get a nice little influx of cash, we were a bit better equipped to cause some havoc in the arena. All of the fights so far had been a total breeze, and we were cutting through the competition at a pretty quick pace. Nobody was really stopping us as we ran into them. Opponents who love to boost backwards or overboost away were going to be a problem though, since I wasn't usually trying to use my energy to catch up with them. So pilots like Snakewood were just a taste of things to come. That being said, we eventually did get through most of our E-rank fights, landing parry blades on majority of them and getting used to fighting in AC on AC combat. It was actually a lot of fun. I was really enjoying myself in this challenge so far, but I knew things weren't going to be going this well for that long. Trudging through the Zidane Weapons Factory again, the turrets on the roof were a symptom of a future problem. Some enemies were going to be on the roof, and fortunately for me, I could hit these ones, but later on, that might become questionable. Luckily though, and I can't believe I'm saying this, I had my parry blade, which I think will be able to stop some of the issues of these roof-bound foes later on in the playthrough. But the practice was great. Missions like Rescue Survey Team were great airblade practice since there were so many small floating targets. That, coupled with the fact I couldn't just take my time or else, the survey team would die, put a bit of stress on me. But honestly, I wasn't too worried about it in the grand scheme of things. The whole point of the challenge was to get better at the game, and I did feel like I was getting better. As we kept going through, I realized I was making pretty good progress. With 10 missions under my belt, I was starting to feel a bit more confident in my abilities to complete this challenge. Nothing had posed a major threat quite yet, but I did know that there was a lot of things coming down the pipe that would test my skills. For now though, I was enjoying the challenge. I had to choose between two missions here, eliminate infiltrators and destroy Nair Bridge. I knew that hitting the monorail might be difficult to get the bonus, but I figured I would try Nair Bridge first. I took this time to swap out the SB Rocks for the SBR-01. 10 less shots was a bit of a drag, but I was finding I was even dipping below half ammo with the SB Rocks, and in the arena, making contact and doing more damage is always a bonus, since hits are only going to get more rare as we move forward in missions and the arena. With that build change out of the way, I decided to get going on Nair Bridge. At the very least, I knew I could complete it, and wanted to see if the parry blade would at least let me hit the monorail, so I strapped in and gave it a shot. The mission went just fine. Unfortunately for me, I couldn't thread the needle to get the bonus from the monorail and be a war criminal, since the structure of the bridge was in the way. But I figured it was worth a shot. Money hadn't really been an issue in the game so far, and I've been happy with the amount of damage we'd been taking. Pay is going well, but we can't be the war criminals that Kisaragi believes that we can be. Oh well, maybe next time. After Nair Bridge was eliminate intruders, which was going to be the first of the tests we would have against an opposing AC in a mission. I was still very confident of my abilities to take down Crossback in the mission, but as I was going through it, I'll admit there was a tiny bit of apprehension, since if I can't do this, the challenge was dead in the water. So I just pressed on, destroying all the power suits and tanks before getting into the fight with Crossback. Luckily, things went just as planned. Targeting him wasn't too bad, and I got through with relatively little damage. So far, this challenge was going swimmingly, and our first AC battle was no problem. I found it hilarious that after landing the parry blade, this guy puts his shield up. Yeah, man, put that shield up. It's totally gonna save you from the spike that just got rammed through ya. After Eliminate Intruders was my first of the choices where I knew I didn't want to do either of them. Prevent Capsule Theft is a mission that pays well, but is exceptionally unforgiving with how fast the MTs steal the capsules away from you. On top of that, I would 100% have to swap to hover legs for it. I don't know if I can move between the points fast enough. Defend Personnel Convoy is an escort mission where we have to protect a bunch of Mirage assets from MTs that come out repeatedly and shoot the transports. Those MTs have a grudge though, and are exceptionally aggressive to the convoy targets. There are also a lot of them, making for a rough mission. I ultimately decided to go with Defend Personnel Convoy since I wouldn't have to revamp the build to be successful. I also think I can do an okay job if I'm quick enough on my feet to get the MTs. So I upgraded my booster to the MBT Ox 002 and hoped that the upping of speed would help me. The end goal is still the mare, but should do for now. I also really wanted to fight Chain Impact to test my abilities with this build, so this was the no-brainer choice. Let's see if we can do it.
We'll evacuate from the south. Cover us!
And of course, Escort Convoy wasn't a problem. In the end, we only lost a few of the civilians, and we got to move in to save the Mirage chipset from Chain Impact, one of my favorite voiced Ravens in the series.
Weaklings. Finally, a worthy opponent.
Wait a second though. Chain Impact only died to 3 blade attacks? Laser blade attacks? Seriously? And he called everyone else a weakling? Well, that was disappointing. I decided to go back into the arena to get a bit more cash just to round out the build, since I felt like I was getting close to what I'd be using for the rest of the game. I did want to get a bit of backup comb though, just in case I needed money for a build swap. You never know. Backbreaker actually stabbed me quite a bit, but the new Parry blade did great cutting through them. And while I was low, I was confident if I toned back my aggression just a bit and focused a bit more on dodging, I would have taken much less damage. But then I remembered I had to fight Fixer. That CWG HD80 handgun is quite the threat, and my radiator just wasn't up to snuff yet. So I was going to have to do this one a bit more intelligently. They do also have a Moonlight as well, so I was at a disadvantage for this one on the melee front. Fixer actually wasn't that bad. While I did eat some handgun rounds and overheat a bit, the damage was minimal. I don't think he made contact with his Moonlight once. It really wasn't that bad of a fight. I was really starting to get better with the Parry blade too. Even though I still whiffed about 75% of the shots, I only need to hit one for it to be worth it. I continued chugging through the arena, not really having any issues among the wide variety of opponents, and the comb was flowing in. Clearing most of the D ranks allowed me to make the cash to upgrade my boosters, and get me them mares, which was giving me the speed that I craved. Moving back to the missions, I got the Ambush Mirage Forces at Avalon Hill mission, which I have been looking forward to. It's a bit of a marathon mission, and I wanted to see how I would do hitting all the quick little bite guys. The Parry blade would be great for the armored MTs that are there as well. This one should be a lot of fun. Avalon Hill, I think, was the first difficult mission I ran into. I had to just not run at every MT and had to separate them from each other. If not, I knew I would get chain stunned by the bazooka rounds, and I did not want that happening. Swiping away at the Bikey Boys was a lot of fun, reminding me of my Armored Core 1 Bikey Boy guys, and these missions did require me to keep my head on a swivel. It wasn't a cakewalk, but it also wasn't crazy difficult either. After conquering Mirage at Avalon Hill, I started to push through the arena again. I wanted to finish off the D ranks, and the fights were getting noticeably tougher. Not so much because of getting shot to death, but because the AI's movement really was starting to improve. But I also noticed improvement in my movement as well, as I was getting way more consistent at doing a jump back, jump forward parry blade swing. Making contact was a lot easier, and getting the range was a lot easier to gauge. That being said, I was still in the lower ranks, so I didn't want my successes to get to my head. But I was really beginning to feel like my melee combat was improving. Pride goeth before the fall, they say. The first fight I think I had trouble with was Clazen. His AI was focused on backing up and just gutting me down with that MG. I was hoping to get in under the guns, but that didn't really work out all that well either. I was trying to focus more on getting the parry blade strikes for those big damage hits, rather than focus too much on just chain lasering people, which probably wasn't the smartest, but the practice did pay off later. If I had to lock in though, I most likely would be defaulting to laser blade. A Moonlight laser blade would have made this a lot easier. Shame it's so far away. After smashing through the arena, it was about high time for a much needed relaxing missile dodging exercise. Going into a zen state for about 2 minutes is nice. Even though we don't get to blade anything, this mission for Kisaragi was a freebie. But right after our freebie was the Ruglin Lab mission, our first test to see how we do against a controller AC. Pushing through the mission, I'm just using the parry blade to pop the bubbles and get through as quickly as I can. Aerial enemies are always annoying on melee builds, and these guys are no different. Getting to the end with the Dove AC, we get in and try and save Nightflyer, and unluckily for us, he just smokes Nightflyer and Coldheart pretty much immediately. I guess the controller doesn't respect melee. Popping the controller agent, we finish up the first mission, where I believe we can actually game over, besides the Raven test. Getting into the C rank arena was when things were really going to get a lot more difficult. Human Plus, or rather Op Intensify, was going to start being a problem. ACs with prolonged flight or firing huge cannons on the move were now a very real threat. And who better to break in that than the main man himself, Thunderhouse, rocking the CWX LIC-10. One of my personal favorite weapons, I might add. He would absolutely crush my HP pool if I got hit, but hey, I only need to avoid 10 of these, and Bolt has given me a lot of practice, so let's just start massacring these C ranks. Doing this fight reminded me of how much I missed my RF-220. The annoying plinks and constant heat were just a tax that I had to be okay with as I chased down Battlefield. Luckily, he's not very tough, so the damage that I did get added up quickly. After many overheats, I got him. Moving through the rest of the C ranks, a major trend I noticed was that trading was usually not in my favor. Hugely powerful weapons were becoming much more commonplace. Things like laser cannons, bazookas, grenade launchers, and rockets were all over the arena. Simply running at a target wasn't enough to cut it anymore. I had to start putting that 9-breaker practice to the test and get behind people to get that turn advantage. That being said, after a few more wins under my belt, we were just over halfway through C rank. These fights were getting much more intense. Speaking of intense, editing these videos takes a lot of effort, so I want to take a moment to ask you, if you're enjoying the video, to consider subscribing. I'd also like to thank my channel members and patrons, Satiga, Peter Van Heerden 2133, Red Hot Boss 1, and V1 Freud for their support to the channel. I have a Patreon in the comments if you do want to support me and what I do, but subscribing helps me more than anything else. And please, only do it if you're enjoying the video. Thank you. Putting the first half of the C rank arena builds behind us, I decided to hop back into missions. I was pretty happy with my overall build so far. Since I upgraded my radiator fully to the RGI KD99, I was feeling a lot better at dealing with output down stuff in both the arena and our missions. The build was pretty much complete. I did enjoy having the MEBT Aux EB for the emergency pushback when I tried to get people in the arena, but the Malum was almost indispensable for those aerial battles I knew I would be taking on later in the game, so I held on to both just in case. Looking at our missions, I saw another one of these missions that I was dreading and I wasn't fully sure I could do it, and that is the Kisaragi mission, Investigate Water Swells. When I was younger, this giant life form kicked the ever-living hell out of me, but I wanted to see if I could mete out my own brand of pain over this overgrown pest. The previously mentioned Malum extensions were MVP for this one, as this thing is stuck to the ceiling. That damage of the boss is actually quite spooky. That, coupled with the fact that it never stops shooting and it knocks you back, meant that if I ever stopped moving or landed, I was in trouble. A few parry blade strikes and some laser sweeps did the job, and the big spooky spider exploded. I was relieved that this one was doable. Also, S-rank. A few more of the missions came along our path. The notorious recover ship cargo was a bit of a freebie, but I wanted to do the safeguard alloy sample one so I could also smash up Grinder. Parry blade recognized parry blade after all. I always felt bad for our truck friend since he's so polite, which made smacking Grinder feel so much better. But in this playthrough, he actually lived all the way to the end. Truck friend lives! Funny that we could save him, but not Coldheart or Nightflyer. Right after that, we hopped into the Ostraca, the sinking ship, pretty much without incident, and we navigated the ship's cracking hull to get our cargo. Nothing really different from a normal playthrough, but hey, if it's the only mission we got, we'll take those freebies. The super popular and fan favorite Assault Crest Facility was next. I always loved doing this one because I could hear Kaiser and Valkyrie rip through all the rooms, but what I didn't expect was how annoying this one would be for the melee-only challenge. You have to clear the turrets in the rooms, and your laser blade is not effective at hitting them. Luckily, our parry blade just grazes them and destroys them for us, and since there isn't too many of these things, this wasn't a huge problem. I once again, after clearing a few of the missions, went back into the arena and noticed that these higher ranked C tiers were much harder to pin down, but nonetheless I fought my way through them, including some sick parry blade strikes. Street Enemy never saw it coming. There were lots of good fights in this one, and I think out of all the C ranks, Impulse was probably the most fun. It was a parry blade slog of us just punching each other, and the only reason I think I won was because of a glancing blow that he landed on me that didn't actually deal full damage from his blade itself. Getting past the halfway point of our missions, we jump into Bomb Disarmament, the third generation remake of the first generation mission Destroy Intruders. Lucky for us, the grates above us do have holes on the side, letting us get onto the roof and to the bombs up there. I couldn't remember if these things existed, but hey, the holes were there. Unfortunately for us, it also dropped us straight into the molten metal when the AC cutscene started playing. We didn't have to kill him though. We did only need to disarm the bombs. Destroy germ canisters also wasn't a problem since we don't care much about the ECM. One of the few times where our melee-only challenge actually was a build boon for us rather than a downside. Slicing up the big glass tubes is a good time. Attack Crest Manufacturing Plant was also just an overboost-a-palooza to get to the end, and then turn around and leave. Destroy Gun Emplacement also didn't slow us down that much, as we just punched the turrets to death, even though they were somewhat hard to see. They can't move after all. And unfortunately, I did turn down the missile launch bonus mission. I wasn't trying to get the Kurosawa. I am not going to blade a bunch of ghost shocks for 6 total minutes. Rank B was where I think I was really going to start to hit my wall on opponents, and where we run into the first of our trifecta of pain. Many of these pilots are Op Intensify enhanced, and on top of that have great AI to pair along with them. This was the part of the arena that I was dreading, as there was 2 pilots here that I was originally worried about. The first and biggest of these threats in my mind was Nocturne. This guy had everything over us that he needed to have. op-intensify blade waves, and more importantly, energy bonuses. And that's not even mentioning the fact that he has a Moonlight and is very aggressive in using it, meaning we lose trades pretty much every time. This, coupled with the fact that he has 3 shotgun-like weapons and is also quite adept at using them, just meant that we were going to be going through it. Secondly, and certainly not least, in my opinion, was also Valkyrie, who had the opposite issue of Nocturne. Being a sniper, she'll rain death on me, and that coupled with her enhanced energy stores means that I couldn't chase her effectively. Luckily though, the Crow extensions wouldn't be a problem, again because we're melee only. But it wasn't much of a consolation prize for the torment I think I was about to experience. Of the two, I do think that Nocturne will be much worse, but Valk was the first arena member I thought of when I was making this challenge. The first few B ranks weren't that bad. Cypress made the poor decision of trading blows with us, which resulted in him dying quickly, being a hover leg and all. Flying Fix as well didn't pose as much of a threat, but the slug gun flamethrower combo was something I certainly had to be aware of. She was also weirdly in the air, which I guess is where her name Flying Fix came from. I forgot how much she liked doing air stuff in the arena. Before getting onto the worst stuff, and it's about to get a lot worse, I thought I should mention I have 2 small rules that I ran for myself while doing these arenas. First, I wouldn't actively try to wait out my opponent's ammunition stores. If they ran out of ammo while I was dodging, so be it. But it was never a strategy that I focused on. Second, I hate cheesing fights in parking garage, so I never pick it. But I didn't want all my arena fights to be, well, in the arena. So I told myself before each match I would pick one battleground and stick to it for the entire fight, win or lose. And I chose exceptionally poorly for our upcoming pilot. Which leads us into the first of our trifecta and major hurdle of the game. Yeah, that's right. Our first of the trifecta and harbinger of absolute pain is our B5 entry in the arena, Nocturne. Nocturne is pretty much totally designed to demolish close-range builds in Armored Core 3. He has 2 MWR TM60 triple-shot back-mounted rocket launcher, a Moonlight laser blade, and most devastating of all, the underrated CWG GS56 dual-barrel shotgun. This combination of parts is horrendous for our build for a multitude of reasons. First of all, Nocturne is Op Intensify Enhanced. This allows him to stay in the air around us for a majority of the match. This is already a huge problem for our run, since if he can stay in the air almost indefinitely, we're going to have a problem striking him with our blade. This brings us to our second issue, his Moonlight. Nocturne is incredibly aggressive with his laser blade, to the point that if we are in range, he will swing it. This poses an issue since his blade has better range than our blade. In a blade joust, we just are not going to have the range advantage. The only good thing for us is that the laser blade we're using, the LS2551, with the arms we are using, has about 1600-ish attack power compared to Nocturne's arms and blade combo of 2100 damage. It's not as unfair of a fight as we might be expecting at first glance, but by far the largest issue is his shotgun. Nocturne's turn speed is not awful, meaning it is going to be difficult to escape his shotgun pressure. Since we want to be as close as possible to actually hit the guy, the shotgun is just a constant tax that we must pay over and over again. It is not to be underestimated. This whole issue started when I decided to do this fight on Reservoir. I was hoping that I would be able to maybe win in the air originally, but that was so incorrect, it wasn't even funny. Nocturne's shotgun and rockets were so oppressive on me that I kept dying again and again and again and again. Eventually, I decided to try the J method of getting around him. No, not the Armored Core 5 J and cheating and grabbing a white glint, but instead of trying to stay below him constantly, I would try to boost backwards, bait him into landing, and then hit him on the very short time he was on the ground. This proved to be somewhat effective until he decided to use his shotgun on me. I noticed that Nocturne kind of went through a cycle. 30 seconds to 1 minute of rockets, into 30 seconds to 1 minute of shotgun, before another 30 seconds to 1 minute of rockets. Using my aforementioned J method, I would try to get behind him and take advantage of the few frames where he landed, sometimes hard as well. There was limited success as he would continue to pepper me with his shotgun, and it would continue to whittle me down. But it would also sometimes pay off very badly, where he would just smash me with his rockets and I would die immediately. But I stayed patient. The fight was hard fought, and well, watch for yourself. The first of the trifecta was down. Well, sort of. Nocturne will make another appearance later at another date, but the man can bleed, which bolstered my attempts to move forward. Valkyrie, on the other hand, who was another one of my people I was very worried about, but not a member of the trifecta, was not a threat at all, and I was completely incorrect. Unlike our previously blade-happy friend, her normally annoying crow stealth extensions did nothing to hinder us and the blading. Her higher energy reserves and aerial combat style weren't a problem either. We could just channel our inner proper distance 5 from the infamous 9-breaker challenge gauntlet and stay below her the whole time to avoid her sniper fire. Luckily too, her AI also for some reason does put an emphasis on blading, allowing us to exploit that. Close the gap, and while she swung at us with her weak laser blade, we smash her with our melee monster, and the fight is done. We did need to get back into missions, as the arena was rapidly dwindling in targets. We were in the home stretch at this point, but I wanted to get a bit more progress on the story before clearing up to some more of the higher ranked arena targets. Destroy Kisaragi forces was an interesting one. I could choose to take the route where there was a bunch of unmanned suicide weapons that I just can't properly deal with, or I could take the outer path and hold off all the Gibbon melee MTs. One of those seems way more reasonable to accomplish for our build, so I took the onslaught of melee MTs, which was surprisingly easy and difficult at the same time, since their vertical hitboxes for their laser blades were so large, but their hurt boxes are also large, letting us cut through them pretty easily. Once they were down, we moved into the underground where Clazen was, and his AI was just as good as his arena counterpart. He's still got it, gutting us down and backing up with staggeringly good accuracy. Luckily for us, Street Enemy took the bullet and trapped him in the corner, letting us parry and laser blade Clazen to death. After separating Clazen from this mortal coil was a few more easy missions. Secure Treen City wasn't much of a problem, as Fnatic behaved herself, and the Osprey MTs exploded pretty handily in a single hit if we made contact. Disable radar equipment was another fun one, allowing us to do a 2v1 against both Backbreaker and Dynamo, which is always a fun fight. Backbreaker put up a bit more of a fight than Dynamo did, but he still ate parry blades like it was his job. Dynamo, I think, just gave up after their friend died, stood there, and got stabbed to death. Seeing a pile bunker get slammed through your buddy's face might do that to you. It's a real backbreaker. Defend Crest HQ actually required some changes to our build. nothing serious, just swapping our trusty Mare booster for the Drake long flight boosters, since we need to squeeze out every second of flight time we could to deal with the controller attack bubbles. This really feels like a 9-breaker challenge exercise on both energy and blading, as we need to stay in the air as long as possible and only hit aerial targets with nothing below us. If we gen bust or dip too low, it's over. So energy management here was critical. Luckily, the temporary build change was very effective at locking down the bubbles, with nothing getting too close. Even though we did it, it doesn't matter and Crest is defeated, but this mission was a great training exercise either way. I could feel my skills improving. Destroy Massive Weapon is another mission that wasn't so bad for this challenge, as ironically the Parry Blade makes our AC incredibly efficient at dealing with the boss, which seems to be a trend in some of the Armored Core games where they just implement the bosses being too big and too easy to hit. There isn't really too much to say, just run up and punch him in the face. And of course, I didn't forget to grab the KWB Mars either. Although, I don't think I'll be using it since I prefer my 20 Parry Blade strikes and just the general handling of the weapon. Man, that's a sentence I wasn't ever going to think I was going to say. I prefer my 20 Parry Blade strikes. But it won't matter anyways. We're going into the second of our trifecta of pain, and he is just as hard and is certainly much more durable than our first member. Fanfare was the one pilot I wasn't too sure about when I was thinking of the roadblocks that were going to pop up. I just remember thinking, oh, that's the rocket guy with those ground torpedoes. I've never had a problem with him. Then the reality set in that I need to actually get point blank with those hand rockets and large rockets, which, spoiler alert, will murder us. Each one of those rockets is almost as much damage as a full contact Parry Blade strike, and with a dangerous amount of heat pressure to boot. This is only further exacerbated by how tough he is. His description doesn't lie. He can take a lot of punishment, and trades are almost never the play, since his rockets will stagger us, canceling our laser blade, and our parry blade is too slow to try and trade with him. So I hear you screaming at your monitor, just outturn him, RC. Well, that's not so simple either. He's Op Intensify Enhance and has an enhanced energy pool. This energy pool is needed so he can constantly use his KEBT TBUN5 turn extensions, which makes trying to get around him and using our J method very unreliable. Getting into the fight, I knew that trying, after failing again and again, chain laser blade strikes wasn't the play. Trying to trap him and cut him down would turn into a race, which we just weren't equipped for, so I opted to try and gamble with more parry blade strikes. Fanfare isn't the fastest, so I was certain I could close in and if timed right could get some good connects, and I was correct. Unfortunately, even with these strikes, getting struck by his rockets almost immediately evened the AP score. But if I could keep him equal with me, I would at least be in the running. After dying a few times trying to close the gap, I did eventually get a good run going. The name of the game was Patience, but not so much patience that he runs out of ammo, or wouldn't feel real. Dipping in and out of rocket blasts, spread howitzer salvos, and ground torpedo launches, I was actually able to worm in and land some good hits. The parry blade was doing work. Fanfare kept the battle close though. Anytime I got complacent, I would eat 2 rockets to the back of the head and start overheating. And that damage really did start to add up. Luckily though, the rotating parry blade strikes made their mark, and I was just barely able to win the fight with a closing laser blade strike. But that wasn't all. Our member of the trifecta wasn't fully beaten. It was only half of the battle, because our next mission, Investigate Magna Ruins, is where he would get his revenge in the name of the controller. For those who know, Huntress betrays us, and knowing what was in store for me, I decide to nip that betrayal in the bud by doing a little backstabbery myself. I don't feel bad. I already got a hand behind my back doing this melee thing, and I know I would need any and all AP I could get while fighting Fanfare. The Magna Ruins was dictated a lot more by evasion and waiting him out. He was much more gung-ho with his rocket usage in this mission than he was in his arena battle, and there was so much more cover to actually use, which did hamper my ability to get in on him. Unfortunately, with this increased ammo usage just meant I had to play smart and wait out salvos, since every time I closed the distance, I would get smashed. Eventually though, his rocket reserves were low. All I had to do was evade the spread howitzers, which still hurt like hell, and punch this controller sympathizer to death. And with that, our first of the trifecta was completely down, and we were into the final 3 missions and final 4 arena fights. Infiltrate Rahito Lab is where we get our rematch with our first member of the trifecta, Nocturne. Before we can have our showdown with the melee monster though, I needed to clear out the rest of the mission, which honestly, even though it's a bit longer for Armored Core 3, isn't the most difficult of all the operations in this game. We just need to not eat too much fire before we get into the fight with Nocturne. Nocturne himself decides to finally grace us with his presence and gives us another somewhat difficult fight. All the reasons that he was difficult are present here, except for the fact that I don't think he is Op Intensify Enhanced, although I can't really confirm it. He still is hyper aggressive, but his turning isn't as strong, and since we're inside, his air power isn't as powerful either. That doesn't mean that he's much easier though. Nocturne, like Fanfare, does claim our life a few times as we get greedy with our blading, requiring us to run through the mission yet again and again and again. But I'm not one to give up on this. Even though I was taking a bunch of damage, I did notice the fight did feel easier. He still chunks us quite badly with his shotgun, but his aggression with his blade is tuned way down as well. Landing a few parry blades puts us in a good spot to get aggressive with our laser blade as well, since we're in the lead, as we can afford to trade with him. Doing the thing he hates the most, we start slicing and eventually clear him out. Now all we need to do is survive, which of course wasn't too difficult, and with that, our second member of the trifecta was down, leaving just the ace up their sleeve. But we would need to get to them first. After Rahito Lab was the mission that I honestly thought would be the most difficult in the game to finish, and this was the mission, Defend Energy Reactor. The issue wasn't so much the first part with the cannons and the turrets, but as much as it was the second part with the controller agent. The quad-like controller AC hits exceptionally hard with its rockets and laser arms. Only a few strikes would remove all of our AP. On top of that, there was of course the time limit, and seeing how melee can sometimes be more evasion than aggression, I was worried about the time requirement. That being said, I once again was completely wrong. The controller AC was very bad at turning, allowing me to pretty much negate his weapon arms whenever I felt like I needed to get out of the way. Since they have weapon arms and their defenses are pretty much nothing, a few strikes and the sparks start flying, and after a few more swings, the mission is over. I wanted to get to this part of the game before I tackled the A ranks of the arena, and that was Destroy Massive MT. For those who don't know, this is where you get the Moonlight laser blade in Armored Core 3, but it does come with a catch. No help allowed. And honestly, I haven't used any help for the whole game, so this shouldn't be too much different. The Massive MT fight took a bit of getting used to for the timing of the battle. I tried laser blading in the air, but the auto-tracking seemed to hurt me more than it would help me for the most part. Evading the quad pursuit missiles was also fun. I didn't want to run decoys since some people might say that that was a weapon, so it was all evasion from your main man RC. I eventually came to the conclusion that the best way to tackle this fight was to just repeat charge him over and over and over again in the air using our overboost function, swinging the parry blade into its bulk when we got a chance, and, well, have a look at how that worked out. We did it! The fight wasn't the easiest though. Having to keep track of the laser blades and the secondary part firing grenades at us did make it a close call. But after a few failed attempts, we did it, and with that, we got our prize, the legendary Moonlight laser blade. With this piece of legendary equipment, I wanted to finally clear the arena, as I wanted to get all my A ranks done before I had my climactic showdown with the controller. Before we hit our A ranks though, we did need to have our fight with Grand Chief. For those who don't know, Grand Chief is a missile monster, and really loves being in the air as a tank. This fight was one of those ones where it was actually hard to try and not wait him out, since he uses missiles at a breakneck pace. There was some cool things though, like getting to hit him in the air with some parry blades since he didn't have any ammunition left, but the fight was a pushover compared to Fanfare and Nocturne. Royal Mist is undisputably one of the funnest fights in the entire arena circuit for Armored Core 3 when doing a pure melee build. Even after beating him, I went back in for more, just because his all-in style was a total blast to fight against as a melee-only AC. The shotgun spread howitzer combo made for some risky plays, and his aggressive usage of his exceed orbits made sure that I was always worried about paying the AP tax to them. Not to mention, those missile salvos with the quad-shot relay extension launchers were always nerve-wracking to dodge. On top of all of his pressure, he was tanky as all hell, but it was a great time to put our new Moonlight to use. He did get the jump on us a few times, and since he was so aggressive, the parry blade got a lot of mileage as well. His fight really was great, and unlike some of the previous ones, I felt like his strength was more fair and less based around his op intensify, hover around you and kick you in the head mentality. Unfortunately, the same could not be said for BB, who was just kind of a boring fight. His turning speed isn't that great, and the fight was more or less just waiting for him to land. Getting too close did mean that we would be eating a shotgun bazooka blast to the face, which we did want to avoid if we could help it. BB was also hyper-aggressive, meaning that if we started fighting with our blade, he would try and counter with his blade. This was obviously beneficial for us since we, short of having the blade optional part, were pretty much maximized on blade damage by having the Moonlight laser blade, and he was using the old 2551. After a few airstrikes, BB was on his last legs, and we were able to catch up to him and finish him off. A little bit upset though that we didn't get to use the parry blade as much, but I really did want to use that Moonlight. This of course left us with the last of our trifecta. And I'm sure you already knew who it was already, and of course it's... Ace was the last of our members of the trifecta of pain, and he rightfully earns his spot being the 9-breaker of our respective game. Effective at almost any range, whether it be mid-range, short, or long range, Ace has a plethora of weapons and the ammunition to go the distance with almost any opponent. This, coupled with his incredible energy reserves, effective aerial movement, and high heat weapons, meant that we had to be exceptionally careful approaching him. Ace wasn't a first try fight by any stretch of the imagination. I had to try a few times to figure out what his AI would prefer for him to do, and getting close to that Moonlight was definitely scary. But I did know that we were stronger in a straight up blade battle. The biggest issue by far when dealing with him was his chain gun. Incredible pressure and consistent damage, plus his ability to fire it on the move, made for a nightmare weapon to deal with, as this thing would overheat us in a heartbeat, and he was very adept at raining death on us from on high. My strategy was to stay below him and attempt to hit him when he landed, but he would use his grenade launcher and try and overheat us while he was sitting above us sometimes. The one thing I had on him was defensive stats. Both my AP and raw defensive values were better, so if I could get into a blade duel, I would win. A lot of what I needed to do was catch him when he was using his overboost and try and punish his hard landings, which he sometimes did do. This entire strategy demanded patience, since trying to contest him in the air was not much of a wise decision. His movement was too good. After landing a few high impact strikes, Ace was low in his AP, and all I had to do was not choke, and the last of the trifecta was down. With that last J maneuver and laser blade strike, Ace and the last of our 3 opponents were down. Honestly, all of them were quite difficult, but I think the arena fight with Nocturne was the hardest of all of them for me. But I do think that was partially attributed to the fact that I chose the Reservoir battlefield for him. At long last though, we could go into the final mission. Infiltrate Layered Hub and put an end to the controller. Infiltrate Layered Hub isn't by any stretch of the imagination a hard mission. It's more of a culmination of the entire game and an homage to the same Destroy Floating Mines mission of AC1. And of course, this ends up with a lot of verticality and a climactic battle against 2 ACs. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately for me, this fight was a complete pushover compared to the fights in the trifecta. Lower ammo counts, frankly, worse AI, and not full HP pools made this fight not as difficult, but I made sure that my parry blade got plenty of use, slapping around these AI bots with extreme prejudice. We needed a little bit of punishment for them destroying Cold Heart and Nightflyer. With a final aerial blade strike, the last controller agent fell and we were face to face with the controller itself. Flying up and finishing off the giant AI was pretty cathartic, finally putting the challenge behind me once and for all. And I couldn't think of a better way to end the run than finishing off the CPU with a nice parry blade coup de grace. As the final cutscene played, I was thinking about why I did this challenge, and if I actually did get better at Armored Core because of it. And honestly, I'm not really sure. Of course, there were certainly difficult fights and design decisions that heavily influenced how I played the game, but I'm sure there will be people in the comments saying that what I did wasn't hard at all, and I understand that. They may be right. There are plenty of more difficult Armored Core games where there might be self-imposed limits that you can put on yourself that would be harder than this one. But honestly, I had a lot of fun doing this challenge for myself and got to fully experience a game I have played hundreds of times through a completely different lens I had never experienced before. And for that, I was really happy that I did it. I think with a little bit of practice, any of you guys could do this as well. It really wasn't as bad as I thought it would be, and I might be open to doing other challenging playstyles in the future of this channel. Let me know if there are any other challenges that you'd be interested in seeing me doing. I don't want to do absolutely crazy things like beating all of Last Raven's Zenaida path with the starter AC or something like that, just because it sounds more frustrating than anything, but who knows, maybe you guys can convince me. Doing things or challenges like finding the worst arena opponent for me was a lot of fun, even though it was mostly me standing still in the middle of the room and providing my analysis on who I think would be the worst. And getting to put my money where my mouth was using one of the worst weapons in my top 10 worst weapons list showed that even something I think is awful can still be useful in the right circumstance. I hope you guys all enjoyed this video as it was a lot of fun to make. And as always, Ravens, I'll see you in the next one.